All right, your joke today. Why did the cop sit on the toilet? To do his duty. All right, chapter 23 is called Perils at Sea. Mary Cornish's fiercest adversary was time. The boys had boarded Lifeboat 12, well fed and healthy, thanks to the abundance of delicious food on the ship. Their extra stores of fat, even from those few days on the ship, would help keep them alive longer. But this extra fat would be depleted as every day went by, especially since the food portions on the lifeboat had to be very small. More than food, they needed water. There would not be enough if they weren't rescued soon. Purvis and Cooper knew that. Purvis would do his best to stretch it out as long as he could. Against them also were other stressors. The extreme cold, fear, boredom, damage to their bodies because they couldn't move around much. The human body is fragile when placed under dire stress. If they weren't rescued soon enough, the boys' organs would start to shut down. They were just boys after all. Bill was 9, Fred, Paul, and Howard were 11, Derek was 12, and Ken 13. They were only human. So was Mary. In her very thin clothes, she already was feeling the effects from exposure, intense cold and exhaustion. She hurt from her bruises and cuts, and she was suffering from lack of water. She felt the mental and emotional stress of keeping the boys alive single-handedly. Father Rory was so sick and weak, but the huge responsibility gave her reason to stay strong, to stay alive. Her strength was tested every now and again by a human adversary, the most outspoken, active, and vibrant man on the boat, Harry Peard. Peard was one of the Navy gunners on the city of Benares. At 38 years old, he had been the oldest gunner on the ship. Now in Lifeboat 12, he was much older than Ronnie Cooper, the captain of the lifeboat, and George Purvis, the steward in charge of the food and water. Peard was small and wiry, 5 feet 4 inches, tall, athletic, and agile. He could easily get around the boat, stepping over or on whoever was in the way. He got along well with the Lascars, even though he didn't speak their language. He had a way of communicating with them. He was cheerful and funny and made everyone laugh. When it came to how things should be done on a lifeboat, Peard was quite opinionated and not afraid to speak his mind, whether it was to Cooper or Purvis, one of the Indian crew, or even Mary Cornish. In many ways, Peard was a real-life hero, a true role model for the boys right there in their very close quarters. He told them that when the torpedo hit, he'd been in the gunner's nest on lookout and had been thrown directly into the ocean by the force of the impact. Others later reported he rescued children who had fallen into the water swimming them to lifeboats. Peard wasn't an upper-crust hero like Bulldog Drummond or Richard Hannay. He was rough, full of energy and salty language, and he could be a show-off. When the weather was decent, when it wasn't storming, he stripped down to his trunks and dived into the water. He'd swim around the boat 2 or 3 times. Sometimes he would even pretend to be drowning to make the boys laugh. One time, one of the boys asked him, "Why are you swimming, mister?" He answered, "Why? To keep in practice in case you get torpedoed again." The boys erupted in laughter. The idea of a U-boat torpedoing a little lifeboat was too funny. "He's a proper screwball," thought Fred, "but one of the nicest chaps you could meet." He and the other boys were glad to have him on board, but he could really get in Mary's way. She was grateful whenever he cheered up her boys, but when he didn't agree with something she was doing, he was harsh and could easily undo the good she'd done. He seemed to have a knack for showing up in her part of the boat at just the wrong moment. When one of the boys had kicked his legs clear of his bit of blanket, or when another had just woken up to complain of the cold, "Here, what's all this?" he'd yell. "This boy doesn't have a blanket. No wonder he's cold, poor little guy. Come on, son, let's tuck the blanket under. That's the way. Ought to be someone keeping an eye on those kids." Of course, that's just what Mary was doing. A few times he was personally nasty to her, saying his wife could have done better, because she had children of her own. Mary had no children, he pointed out, and wasn't likely to either, he added. "You're right on both counts," Mary responded. "And what of it?" He was tough on Roy O'Sullivan, too. He told the priest to stop lying about and praying so much. Mary stood up for Rory, explaining he was sick, which of course Peard knew. But in truth, Peard did respect Mary, especially her storytelling. When Mary's voice started to give out, Peard came to their part of the boat and taught the boys salty old songs. Maybe changing some of the bad words, maybe not. He taught them, "My old man said follow the van in any old iron. Any old iron, any old iron, any old iron. You look neat, talk about a treat. You look dapper from your napper to your feet. Dressed in style, brand new tile, and your father's old green tie on. but I would give you tuppence for your old watch chain. Old iron, old iron? Baden Nagorski thought Peard was terrific, keeping up the spirits of everyone on the boat, especially the Lascars. Peard was always ready for any difficult job in the boat. Nagorski noticed with admiration, but Mary was furious when she heard him say within earshot of the boys that it was likely they wouldn't reach Ireland alive. When that was all she was trying to do, keep those boys alive. The weather was good their 4th day at sea, so Cooper had the sail up and they were going at a good clip. Doug Critchley, the 20-year-old cadet, was proving to be a great asset to the boat. Father Rory was quite impressed. Critchley lived in Liverpool and was an avid sailor back home. Here on the lifeboat, Father Rory admired his expertise at the tiller. Critchley also did more than his share of the watches. He asked Father Rory if he would teach him French. The priest said he would if he felt better, but he never did. For a while on this day, with the nice weather, Father Rory was well enough to stand up and take a look around. Scanning the vast ocean, he noticed a pod of whales. It was something to see, finally, for the boys. Whales! Everyone look! What a great spectacle! Soon the whales seemed to surround the boat. The boys loved it. The whales were so huge and so close, their big tails flapping on the water as they dove under. And then the great surprise of where they'd come back up again. Maybe on the other side of the boat, maybe. And then the crew realized that if the whales got too close or came up under the boat, they could smash it all to pieces. So Lifeboat 12 was steered away from that potential danger. There were many perils at sea. The trick was to outsmart them.